Good Tuesday morning. Thanks for being with us on Kare 11 News Now. I'm Megan McPherson. It's the first day of the 2026 legislative session, and this morning lawmakers will meet to honor late Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband. And then tomorrow they dive into a packed agenda. Audrey Russo is at the state capitol breaking down what's on the docket this year.
Good morning. Yeah, we're expecting three big issues to be on the docket and really the spotlight of the legislative session. Those are immigration enforcement, gun control, and fraud. Now, House DFLers say that they want to limit the use of flashbangs and tear gas during demonstrations, and they want to make it easier to sue federal agents for constitutional violations. Now, House Republicans say that they plan to revive a proposal that would ban sanctuary policies in Minnesota. On gun control, Democratic leaders are likely to propose an assault weapons ban. House Republicans plan to focus on increased funding for school safety and mental health services instead. Now that brings us to fraud. House Republicans say that they once again want to introduce legislation that would establish an Office of the Inspector General statewide in Minnesota. Now, DFLers say that they were a little bit concerned last year about the cost and the structure of what that would look like, but they say that they would revisit it and they're interested in revisiting it again this legislative session. Back to you.
Breaking news this morning, Reverend Jesse Jackson, longtime civil rights activist and Baptist minister, has died at 84. His family announcing this news in just the last few hours. Right now, we don't know how he died. President Trump just posted about Jackson's death, saying that he knew him well and that he truly loved people and was a, quote, force of nature. Jackson was admitted to the hospital back in November and has lived for more than a decade with a rare neurological condition called progressive supranuclear palsy. It affects body movements, walking and balance, and eye movements. Jackson was a longtime civil rights activist, Baptist minister, and two-time presidential candidate. His decades-long legacy shaped the civil rights movement. Jackson rose to prominence in the 1960s, working closely with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and continuing his vision for Black liberation. He founded Operation Push in 1971 and the National Rainbow Coalition in 1984, which later merged, to advocate for social justice and economic empowerment. And Jackson has visited the Twin Cities on several occasions. He attended both George Floyd and Daunte Wright's memorials in Minneapolis. He preached at New Salem Missionary Baptist Church in 2018, and he came to St. Paul in 2016 after the deadly shooting of Philando Castile. Reverend Al Sharpton paying tribute to Jackson on MS Now this morning. Take a listen.
He would tell me that preaching was not just having one church, it's being able to deal with the issues of the world, and that was the kind of way he taught me, and he was definitely the most definitive teacher in my life.
Jackson's family says public observances will be held in Chicago, and future plans for celebration of life events will be announced by the Rainbow Push Coalition. It has been 1 year since this Delta flight from Minneapolis crash landed upside down at the Toronto airport. Everyone on board surviving, but not without complications and trauma still lingering. Jason Hackett spoke with survivor John Nelson about how he's recovered since that nearly tragic day.
And there are very few people that can say they survived a plane crash. I don't believe anybody escaped sort of unharmed. Neck and sort of back issues, the PTSD, the struggle just kind of day in and day out with anxiety.
Delta says they are still fully engaged in the investigation and are awaiting a final report on what caused the crash. Developing this morning, sheriff's office officials now say the Guthrie family has been officially cleared as suspects in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, including all of Nancy's children and their spouses. This comes as the FBI is zeroing in on DNA found in a glove near her home. But investigators say there still isn't a leading theory or motive in her February 1st disappearance. And right now, a live look at the Capitol, where a partial government shutdown has no end in sight as Congress is on recess until next week. The Homeland Security shutdown comes as Democrats push for overhauls for ICE, like requiring visible ID and prohibiting face coverings. It's important to note that ICE and Border Patrol likely won't be affected because they're funded through the Big Beautiful Bill. But critical workers at the TSA, FEMA, and the Coast Guard will continue working without pay. Happening today, two major negotiations that could shape politics around the world for years. In Geneva, U.S. leaders are meeting with Iranian officials for a second round of nuclear talks. Separately, negotiators are also trying to mediate a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. Alice Barr has details from Washington.
Hi there. The Trump administration taking on big challenges today on these two long-standing disputes. Iran heads to the table following intense protests that some analysts believe weaken its position. The Trump administration turning to foreign policy today with separate high-level negotiations in Geneva, Switzerland, on Iran's nuclear program and Russia's war on Ukraine. President Trump saying he'll be indirectly involved in the Iran talks.
I don't think they want the consequences of not making a deal. They want to make a deal.
The president sending a second U.S. aircraft carrier to the region ahead of the talks, ramping up the pressure on Iran to curb its nuclear program, as Iranian officials signal some flexibility in exchange for sanctions relief. The U.S. military buildup in the region follows Iran's violent crackdown last month on sweeping protests. President Trump asked Friday about regime change in Iran.
Seems like that would be the best thing that could happen.
He's also referenced last year's U.S.-Israeli bombing campaign that badly damaged Iran's nuclear infrastructure, suggesting further military action is on the table without a deal. In retaliation for any attack, Iran has threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz, choking off a critical global oil pathway. All as top Trump envoys tackle a separate challenge today, mediating negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. Whether Ukraine will have to give up territory remains a central sticking point, closing in on the 4-year mark of Russia's full-scale invasion. Ukraine's president urging allies to help force Russia to peace, as President Trump called on Ukraine to come to the table fast. Back on Iran, officials there have said they won't entirely give up enriching uranium, which they claim is not intended for a nuclear weapon. That, though, likely to be a hard line for U.S. negotiators. The top Iranian diplomat did meet Monday with the head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog to talk possible cooperation. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Amber Glenn is one of the top U.S. figure skaters at the 2026 Games. She's been training in Colorado for years and has a great chance of upsetting the world and coming away with gold at the Games. Alicia Lewis is in Milan with more on her story.
Not only is she at the top of her game when it comes to skating, she's an advocate for mental health awareness, LGBTQ rights, plus she's a self-proclaimed nerd. Who can love that? Meet Amber Glenn. At the World Arena Ice House in Colorado Springs.
I've been training in the Springs for about 3 years now.
At 25 years old, Amber Glenn is the veteran on the U.S. figure skating team.
Last year was a breakthrough year for me, and I want to continue building on it.
Blending years of experience on the ice with a routine that at the Milan Cortina Winter Olympics has Amber top of her game.
Just thinking about that gives me a lot of motivation and excitement.
Dealing with the pressure of women's figure skating on the world's biggest stage.
It's me and the thousands of people that are directly looking at me.
By using neurotherapy to overcome anxiety.
It follows your neurons firing, your brain activity, your heart rate, factors in all those types of things, and you are able to, it's almost like a dog clicker like training thing. It teaches your brain to either calm down, speed up, what other might need to do, because it's not just for athletes. There are people with Alzheimer's or Parkinson's that use it.
Glenn is also an LGBTQ advocate and an open pansexual, using her sports platform to encourage kindness.
So I try and use the small platform that I had to encourage people to be more accepting and more loving.
And when she's not geeking out over Star Wars.
It is a Star Wars pride pin, absolutely adorable, so very sweet.
Amber is on the ice in Colorado Springs.
Being surrounded by the mountains and by just such Olympic spirit has been really motivating over these past 3 years.
Working on her routine and improving with age.
I love the people around me, my community, my home. Just everything has come together so well in my now adult life.
Amber's hoping to get in that top 24 spot today, and she has a really good shot at it for the finals this Thursday. Reporting in Milan, Alicia Lewis, KARE 11 News.
Stick with us. More news and weather is coming up after the break.